Hello, welcome to another video. I'm going to go ahead and start a part three about ending relationships. My last video, I was trying to finish up, kind of talking about this example that I was using for, um, you know, a girl I had heard. I think it was on Facebook, just talking about how um, one of her friends just kept asking her over and over about her due date, and she just didn't really know how to approach it, and she thought she was just irritated because she was pregnant. Um, but I was just using because I think it's a good example of like how um, things like that will happen in a relationship, and how it's handled will usually kind of dictate if the relationship is something that you need to continue on with or not. Now there are outside factors. Sometimes I think there were times when, like, when I ended a friendship because I was just going through too much at home, and I just couldn't. I couldn't deal with trying to put any energy and focus into another relationship. Sometimes things like that happen. Me and my husband have talked about, when we started dating and got married, things like that. We tried to end friendships just because, it doesn't really make sense to not necessarily give full focus into your relationship. Sometimes that's true. I know a lot of people do have friends and they're married. Um, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I just can't speak for it because I've never been through that myself. But anyway, my point with the example that I was using with the girl and her birth, her due date, was um, like, if you're going to end a relationship, a lot of times you'll run into these things. Like I said in the last video, crossing boundaries, right? But you have to figure out if the person is willing to change, or are they, I mean, do they give you enough respect? I mean, there's things like that. Like I said, if the girl approaches the her friend and she says, "Look, sometimes it irritates me when people repeat things. I mean, when I have to repeat things. Do you think you could put my due date on your calendar?" Um, that kind of pushes the friend into a point of change or not change. If they say, "Yes, I don't mind doing that. I understand." Um, well, I wish it would go that way. A lot of times it doesn't go that way, but let's say that it does. You kind of just move on to the next thing really that comes up. Um, but unfortunately, because that doesn't usually happen, a person may say yes and they don't do it and they continue to ask, or they may get offended and just be like, well, that was really rude. The way you talk to me, that's usually pretty typical. Excuse me. That kind of stuff will kind of indicate maybe it's time to make a change in the relationship. And and really, that's one thing, but it's never really one thing that ends a relationship. I want to make that clear. Like, every time I've ended a relationship, it was never one thing. It was never one problem. Sometimes dating was probably the better example for me. Um, Sometimes I would run into things that, like, first of all, I knew I just couldn't deal with. Um, or, you know, a lot of times I would meet somebody, and, you know, so much would happen within one day. I just knew I couldn't even talk to them anymore. Um, just things that you can't deal with. Um, I guess those aren't the best example because I'm talking about short term things. Long term relationships, um, you know, you usually end up in a long-term relationship because you value the person in some way. Like I said, I still probably would use dating more than anything. You know, I had a couple relationships where I valued the person in a certain way. Like um, I think we tend to value people who we can talk to and they'll listen to us. Um, so you overlook a lot of things. I mean, that's going to happen too in relationships. You're already overlooking a lot of things, but then some things happen that is just impossible to overlook. For me, physical abuse was just something I could not tolerate. Um, and my one of the guys I dated was abusive, and over time it just escalated and became worse and worse. And I just knew that I could not stay with this person. Maybe that's more um, obvious, you know. That's why I try to choose better examples of like, um, you know, I've talked to people before, tried to maintain like a relationship through like texting, for example, and and they would just not respond as often, and unfortunately you could tell like something was wrong, but like you just don't know how to approach it. Like um I don't know if you run into this, but a lot of people just don't understand that they're even hurt or offended by things. So they act out. I talked about this a little bit in the first video. They'll act out in ways that it's clear that like they're hurt and they're kind of like punishing you, and you'll feel something's not right. You feel like they're acting kind of mean towards you. Um, that kind of thing has happened to me before, and I've had to um, end relationships because of it. Um, like I said, like there's well, it's not even necessarily that you've done something. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like you should always assume that you've done something wrong. It doesn't hurt to approach the person and ask if you've done something wrong, but like, um, you know, I think some people just tend to view relationships as it's just somebody you can use. Um, I had this relationship one time where uh, a person was talking to me, and they they sometimes would tell me that they were going to be gone for a little bit, like they were going to be busy for a little bit and wouldn't be able to talk. But then, you know, it started happening more and more where it was like, you know, 2 or 3 days would go by, and I just remember getting to a point where like I didn't feel like addressing it. Like, you know, sometimes if you approach the person about it, you can just tell they're not going to be in a place to receive it. They're not going to change. I had to end a relationship because of that one time. Um, and so, like, my point is, it's very difficult to decide to end a relationship long term, especially. Excuse me, because you know, I think we all have problems that we know everybody has, so we try to overlook a lot of it. But then at the same time, there are things that we just can't overlook, and you know, everybody has their breaking point. Everybody, um, you know, has to just figure out, are they are they in too much pain or not. So that's another thing I would say. Like, you really have to pay attention to how you're feeling. Um, you know, if you're the one that's not talking to this person for days at a time, ask yourself why. You really have to ask yourself why. Really think about what you're feeling in the relationship. A lot of times that's how I figured out to stop relationships. I just really think about, is this affecting my self-esteem? Like, how is this making me feel? You know, if you get outside the relationship and you spend like hours thinking about it, well, let's just say an hour, if you think about it before you bed, and like you're starting to stress and stuff like that, no, the relationship's not good for you anymore. You just need to either take a break, or you know, there is always the option to try to talk to the person if you feel like you can talk to them. Most people you can't, unfortunately, unless you live with them. That's different. That's why, I'm not really going into marriages with this kind of stuff. But I think it's just important to just be open to ending relationships if you feel like it's causing you pain in some kind of way. Um, and it does take a while to really think about what pain you're going through. And like, um, really, it's complicated because um, people can kind of like, I don't know if you run into this, but people kind of stay in this in between point where they won't do quite enough like to break up a relationship, but they'll do little things that are disrespectful, not purposeful, of course, but they'll do little things that like you just kind of are like, well, I'm not really sure if I should end it because you know the person didn't do anything obviously um, toxic. I mean, like I said before, if somebody's abusing you, yeah, it's probably pretty obvious to end it. But um, a lot of relationships are complicated because it's like, well, um, there's positive and negative, and people don't quite do enough sometimes to make you feel like you should cut them off. But anyway, I guess I'll go ahead and wrap it up there. I know I've gone on a little long, but um, it's just a lot to it, and I may continue another time. But if you have any questions, just leave those in the comments. And I thank you for watching. Have a nice day.